Previously on our story, Sharon and Mr. Emmanuel became a thing. They are now a couple and they are planning to open up a shop. Mr. Emmanuel is planning to open for Sharon a real pancake shop. So we're going to dive into our video, but before I do, kindly subscribe to this channel if you've not yet subscribed. And for my returning viewer, thank you so much for always coming back. Thank you so much for choosing to watch these stories. So let us dive into the story. Leave something in the comment section. Just let me know what you think of it, and don't forget to like it, because when you like, it will be recommended. So let us dive into our amazing story. Over the next few months, Sharon and Mr. Emmanuel worked tirelessly to turn their dream into a reality. Mr. Emmanuel found a small but beautiful shop in a busy part of Kampala, perfect for selling pancakes. Sharon couldn't believe how quickly things were moving. The shop was painted in bright colors and it has a sign that reads Sharon's Pancake Shop. As the opening day drew closer, Sharon was filled with excitement but also fear. What if no one came? What if it failed? On the morning of the grand opening, Sharon stood in front of her new shop, nervously clenching her apron. Mr. Emmanuel stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You're going to be amazing," he whispered. Slowly, people started to arrive. Some were her regular customers from the market, while others were new faces who had heard about the shop. Sharon's children were also there, proudly wearing little aprons and helping to serve the pancakes. As the day went on, the shop became busier and busier. People couldn't get enough of her pancakes, but by the end of the day, she had sold out everything. Sharon was exhausted but overjoyed. Her dream was finally coming true. As they locked up the shop at that night, Mr. Emmanuel turned to Sharon and said, "I told you, you could do it." The success of Sharon's pancake shop continued to grow. Every day, more and more customers came to taste her famous pancakes, and soon the shop was the talk of the town. Sharon was happier than she had never been. She finally had a stability for her children, a business of her own, and a man who truly cared for her. But one afternoon, just as Sharon was serving a group of customers, she saw someone standing at the door. Her heart sank. It was Jacob. He looked different from the last time she had seen him, tired, worn out, and with a look of regret in his eyes. He approached the counter and Sharon could feel her hands starting to shake. "Sharon," Jacob said quietly, "I came to talk." Sharon sniffed, not sure what to say. She hadn't spoken to Jacob since the last time he showed up in the market. "What do you want, Jacob?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Jacob looked around the shop, clearly impressed. "I heard about your success," he said, rubbing back of his neck. "I never thought you would make it this far." Sharon crossed her arms. "What does that mean to you? You left us, Jacob. You didn't care about what happened to me or the children." Jacob sighed. "I know, I've made a lot of mistakes. My new wife, she left me. I lost everything. I just wanted to come and see if we could talk." Sharon stared at him in disbelief. After all these years, after all the pain he had caused, now he wanted to talk. Man. She could feel the hunger raising her chest. But before she could respond, Mr. Emmanuel walked into the shop, his expression firm. "Is there a problem here?" Mr. Emmanuel asked, standing protectively beside Sharon. Jacob glanced at Mr. Emmanuel, then back to Sharon. "Yes, I see," he muttered. "I guess I'm too late." Without another word, Jacob turned and walked out of the shop, leaving Sharon standing there, her heart racing. Mr. Emmanuel gently touched her arm. "Are you okay?" Sharon took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine." He's part of my past now. I'm not going to let him ruin what we have. As time went on, Sharon's relationship with Mr. Emmanuel deepened. He was not just her business partner. He was her rock, her best friend, and someone she could trust with her heart. The children adored him, and soon he became a father figure to them, something Sharon had never thought possible after Jacob had left. One evening, after they had closed the shop and put the children to bed, Mr. Emmanuel took Sharon's hand in his. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about the future," he said softly. Sharon looked at him, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Mr. Emmanuel smiled warmly. "Sharon, I love you. I love your children. I want to be with you forever. I've waited long time to say this, but I want to marry you. Will you marry me?" Oh, he proposed. Sharon's breath caught in her throat. She had never imagined that someone like Mr. Emmanuel would love her this much, would want to build a life with her and her children. Tears of joy filled her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, I will marry you." In that moment, Sharon knew she had finally found the happiness she had longed for, a new family, a new beginning, and a love that would last forever. The days following Mr. Emmanuel's proposal were filled with excitement and joy. Sharon could hardly believe it. She was going to marry a man who had not only helped her build her life, but also captured her heart. The children were just as thrilled. Mark couldn't stop talking about the big day. Sarah was already imagining herself as a flower girl, and little Ruth clapped her hands whenever everyone mentioned the word wedding. As the wedding plan began, Sharon found herself overwhelmed by the details. She had never thought she would be in a position to plan a wedding, let alone a beautiful one. Mr. Emmanuel, being the thoughtful man he was, insisted that it didn't need to be grand, just something special for their family and close friends. But he would still want it to be a day Sharon would never forget. They decided to have a wedding in the garden of their new home, a house that Mr. Emmanuel had brought for them. It was a cozy place with enough room for children to play and a beautiful backyard full of flowers that would be the perfect setting for their wedding. One evening, after a long day of work at the pancake shop, Sharon sat with Mr. Emmanuel, going over the guest list. She had never felt so grateful in her life. "I never thought I would have a second chance like this," she whispered, looking at him with tearful eyes. Mr. Emmanuel squeezed her hand. "You deserve all of this and more, Sharon. I'm the one who is lucky to have found you." As they finalized their plans, there was still a small voice in the back of Sharon's mind. The fear of something going wrong, the fear of losing her happiness. But each passing day, she reminded herself that she had survived so much, and now it was her turn to embrace the joy in front of her. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and beautiful. The sun shone warmly, and flowers in the garden seemed to bloom brighter than ever. Sharon felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple yet elegant white dress that Emmanuel had surprised her with. Sarah, dressed in her light pink flower dress, twinkled around the room, her excitement bubbling over. "Mama, you look like a princess," she said, clapping her hands. Mark, looking damper in her little suit, came into the room with a proud grin. "You look amazing, Mama," he said, his voice full of admiration. Sharon couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. Her children had been through so much, and now they were about to witness something beautiful, something that would show them what real love and family looked like. As the guests began to arrive, Sharon's heart raced. Friends from the market, her regular customers, and even some of the new staff at the pancake shop had come to celebrate with her. And there, at the front of the garden, stood Mr. Emmanuel, looking as handsome as ever, with a smile that melted Sharon's worries away. The ceremony was simple yet magical. As Sharon walked down the aisle, her heart pounded with every step she took. When she reached Mr. Emmanuel, their eyes met, and in that moment, all her doubts disappeared. This was where she belonged. With the children standing by their sides, Sharon and Mr. Emmanuel exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other for the rest of their lives. When the priest finally pronounced them as husband and wife, the garden erupted in alaps and the children cheered with pure joy. As they shared their first kiss as married couple, Mary knew she had found a love stronger than she had ever imagined. A love that had come from the most unexpected place, from a kind man who had seen her for who she truly was. After the wedding, life for Sharon and her new family blossomed into something beautiful. Mr. Emmanuel officially adopted Sharon's children, and they became a united family. The children had never been happier. Mark now had a father figure he could look up to. Sarah basked into a warmth of their new home. Ruth, though still young, seemed to thrive into a loving environment around her. The pancake shop continued to do well. With Mr. Emmanuel's support, Sharon was able to open a second branch in another part of Kampala. Her success was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of, and her confidence grew with each passing day. But while everything seemed perfect, Sharon couldn't help but remember the difficult road that led her here. She often thought about Jacob, the man who had abandoned her and the children when they needed him most. But she realized now that his leaving had opened the door for something better, something she never could have imagined. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Mark looked up at Mr. Emmanuel and asked, "Dad, can you tell us how you met Mama?" Mr. Emmanuel chuckled, looking at Sharon with a playful smile. "It all started with the best pancakes I've ever tasted," he said. Sharon laughed, her heart swelling with happiness, "and the kindest man I ever known." As they shared their story of how their love blossomed from something as simple as the pancake stall, Sharon knew that their journey had only just begun. They had faced challenges, heartbreak and uncertainty, but together they had built a new life, a life filled with love, laughter and hope. Love seemed perfect for Sharon and her new life. But one day, as Sharon was leaving the pancake shop, she saw someone standing across the street. Her heart stopped. It was Jacob. He looked thinner, more rugged, and same sadness that had been in his eyes the last time he saw him. Sharon felt a rush of emotion, hunger, pity, and confusion. Why was he back? What did he want? She stood there for a moment, frozen, unsure of what to do. Before she could decide, Jacob crossed the street and approached her. "Sharon," he said quietly, his voice rough, "I need to talk to you." Sharon stiffened, not wanting to hear whatever he wanted to say. "There is nothing left to say, Jacob. You left us and I moved on." Jacob nodded, looking down at the ground. "I know, and I regret every single day. I made a huge mistake. I thought I would be happier without a responsibility, but now I have nothing." Sharon's heart inched, but she stood firm. "That's not my problem, Jacob. You made your choice." "I know," Jacob said, his voice cracking, "but I came to ask if I could at least see the children. I miss them, Sharon. I want to see them." Sharon's breath caught in her throat. After everything he put them through, how could he ask this from her now? She didn't know what to do. Should she let him back in their lives, even for a moment? Or should she protect her children from the man who abandoned them? Sharon stood in front of Jacob, her mind spinning. He wanted to see the children, but how could she let him? After all the pain he had caused, and after walking away from their lives without a second thought. But at the same time, there were a part of her that knew Jacob was still their father, and her children had the right to decide for themselves. "I need to think about it," Sharon said, her voice steady but guarded. "This isn't a decision I can make right now." Jacob nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I understand, Sharon. Just please think about it. I miss them." With that, Jacob turned and walked away, leaving Sharon standing alone, her heart heavy with uncertainty. That night, as she sat with Mr. Emmanuel, after putting children to bed, she told him everything. "I don't know what to do," Sharon said, tears filling her eyes. "He left us, now he's back, and I'm afraid of what this will do to the children. What if they get hurt again?" Mr. Emmanuel took her hand, his voice calm but reassuring. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. But maybe you should talk to the children. They deserve to know what is happening and how they feel about it." Sharon nodded, knowing that he was right. She needed to hear what her children thought. The next day, she gathered them in the sitting room and gently explained that their father had come back and wanted to see them. Mark, being the oldest, was the first to speak. "Why does he want to see us?" he asked, his voice mixed with anger and confusion. "He left us and he didn't care." Sarah, always more sensitive, hugged her knees and whispered, "I don't know, Mama. I don't even remember him very well." Sharon looked at her youngest Ruth, who didn't say anything but seemed confused by the conversation. It was clear that none of them really knew what to make of the situation, just like Sharon herself. "I'm not asking you to make a decision right now," Sharon said gently, "but I want you to know that wherever you decide, it's okay. We'll figure this out together." After talking with the children, Sharon felt a bit of more ease. She knew they had mixed feelings, but she also knew that they needed to confront the past in order to move forward. So after days of thinking it over, Sharon made the decision to let Jacob see the children. Under one condition, it will be supervised, and only if the children were comfortable with it. When Sharon told Jacob, he agreed without hesitation. He showed up the next weekend looking nervous and unsure of himself. Sharon, along with Mr. Emmanuel, watched Jacob greeted the children. Mark, though polite, kept his distance. Sarah, curious but hesitant, stayed close to her mother, and Ruth, who barely remembered Jacob, stared at him with wide eyes. "Hi kids," Jacob said softly, his voice cracking with emotion. "I've missed you." There was a long, awkward silence before Sarah spoke. "Why did you leave us?" Jacob looked down, guilty written all over his face. "I was selfish, and I thought I could find something better, but I was wrong. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." Mark crossed his arms. "And you want us to just forget that?" "No," Jacob said quickly. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance to be part of your life again, even if it's just a small part." Sharon watched as children processed with his Sharon watched as the children progressed his words. She could see the pain and confusion on their faces, but she also saw a glimmer of curiosity, especially in Sarah, who seemed torn between her feelings. Mr. Emmanuel stood beside Sharon, his presence constant source of strength. Sharon knew that no matter what happened with Jacob, she and the children had built a strong, loving family with Mr. Emmanuel, and nothing could take that away. Over the next few weeks, Jacob's visits became more regular, though they were always supervised. Sharon remained curious, but she could see that Jacob was genuinely trying. He showed up on time, brought small gifts for children, and never pushed too hard. It was a slow process. Little by little, the children began to open up to him, especially Sarah, who wanted to be more close to her father. One afternoon, after another visit, Sarah came to Sharon and said, "Mama, do you think that Jacob will really change?" Sharon knelt down to her daughter's level and brushed a stray curry on her face. "I think people can change, but it takes time to know if they have really changed. What matters is how you feel, Sarah. Do you want to give him another chance?" Sarah bit her lip, thinking, I think I want to know him better, but I don't want to forget what he did." "You don't have to," Sharon said gently. "It's okay to remember the hurt, but it's also okay to see if he really can be better now. You can take your time." That conversation opened a door for Sharon too. She realized that part of her had been holding to the hurt from Jacob's abandonment, even though she had found happiness with Mr. Emmanuel. Maybe for her own peace, she needed to find a way to forgive Jacob, not for his sake, but for hers. One evening, after a long day at the pancake shop, Sharon found herself thinking about forgiveness. She had been hungry with Jacob for so long, but holding on to the hunger was so exhausting. She had built a beautiful life with Mr. Emmanuel and her children, and Jacob's return had stirred up old wounds, but also brought closure. Sharon decided to meet Jacob alone without the children to have an honest conversation. When they met at a small cafe, Jacob looked nervous, as if he knew this was an important moment. Sharon sat across from him, her heart steady but her mind clear. "I didn't ask you here to argue," Sharon began. "I want to talk." Jacob nodded, looking relieved. "I'm glad. I've been waiting to apologize properly for everything. I know I've hurt you and the kids, and I'll never be able to fix what I did." Sharon took a deep breath. "You are right, Jacob. You can't fix the past, and I won't pretend that everything is okay. But I've come to realize that holding on to the pain is only hurting me. So I'm choosing to forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I need to move on completely." Jacob looked down, his eyes glittering with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Sharon, but thank you. That means more than you know." As Sharon left the cafe, she felt lighter, as if the weight she had carried for years had finally been lifted. She had forgiven Jacob, and now she could fully embrace the beautiful life she had built with Mr. Emmanuel and her children, a life filled with love, hope, and future free from shadows of the past. With forgiveness behind her, Sharon felt a newfound peace within herself. Life with Mr. Emmanuel and the children continued to blossom, and the tension that had come with Jacob's reappearance started to fade. The children were adjusting well to their new reality, understanding that their father had made a mistake but was trying to rebuild the trust. Sharon noticed that Sarah had become closer to Jacob. She often asked Sharon if she could visit him. While Sharon was curious, she allowed it. Mark, on the other hand, remained more distant. He wasn't angry anymore, but it was clear that he had accepted Mr. Emmanuel as the father figure in his life. One afternoon, Sharon and Mr. Emmanuel sat on the porch of their home, watching the children playing in the yard. "It was amazing how far we've come," Sharon said, leaning onto him. Mr. Emmanuel smiled, wrapping his arms around her. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined, Sharon. You've turned your life around completely." Sharon looked out at her children, feeling warmth of Mr. Emmanuel's love. "I couldn't have done it without you." He chuckled. "You give me too much credit. You had the strength all along. I just helped you see it." As they sat there, Sharon realized that no matter what challenge came their way, she and Mr. Emmanuel would face them together. Their love was strong and they had built a family that could. With that, Sharon and her family lived a very beautiful life. Her business expanded, she got new opportunities, and she was the talk of the town. And she and Mr. Emmanuel, their love grew stronger with each passing day, and the children adopted as Jacob as their father. So this is the end of our story. Thank you so much for watching. Leave something in the comment section. I love you all. See you in my next story.